My name's Max Kantelia, and I'm the CEO and founder of Zilliqa Group.
Max, would you mind expanding on exactly what Zilliqa Group is?
Of course, Amir. Zilliqa Group is a venture builder, and Zilliqa Group actually consists of 4 different entities or ventures. Zelica Technology, which is our layer 1 blockchain. MetaMinds, which is actually our metaverse as a service venture. Token Tracks, which is our blockchain-based music platform. And Rolling Thunders, which is actually a Web3 gaming studio. And that's what constitutes this group of companies.
Now, there's a lot going on there. How do the dynamics work?
We're really privileged today to be at Huntsman, which is one of London's oldest Savile Row-based tailors, in fact, started up in 1849. And what's kept this brand alive is continuous evolution and innovation, and listening to the customer. We've been around since 2015, when the idea behind Zelica, the blockchain, was first born. And even then, my vision was to create blockchain infrastructure, or what today we refer to as Web3, such that this infrastructure would give birth to Web3-based giant ventures. And so today, I'm really proud to say that we have actually brought these ventures together to provide technology which we believe will propel luxury brands and the entertainment sector into its next phase of growth.
And on that, why do you think it's so important that it happens now?
I think it's very important that this happens now, because rather than looking at geographical client bases, we need to look at the demographic, because one cannot argue with demographic. And I know, because you're such a young man, Amir, that you'll understand this, but Gen Z and Gen Alpha are going to play a very, very important part in the consumption of luxury over the next 10 years. In fact, Gen Alpha, by the end of 2024, will become the biggest ever population historically that will be consuming worldwide. And the opportunity that luxury brands have is to think about what Gen Z and Gen Alpha looks for when they consume luxury. And that's why the moment has absolutely come. I've spent the last 4 or 5 years studying this age group, which has been tremendous fun and sometimes a little bit bewildering. But I think that luxury brands need to embrace these audiences and plan ahead.
Well, yes, you've touched on that. That is a challenge, wouldn't you say? That sort of taking that next step for these brands who are steeped in history and tradition. What do you say to them?
Well, I think that there are several examples or case studies in today's marketplace. I've promised my teams that I wouldn't spend too much time talking about cars, which I can get a little obsessive about, especially on the back of the Goodwood Revival weekend. But Rolls-Royce is an excellent example of a brand that has a certain texture to it that we all know and recognize. Rolls-Royce had their best ever year last year. They sold 6,000 units. And in fact, the average age of a Rolls-Royce owner has plummeted. And they don't spend time in the back seat anymore. They choose to drive the car. So this is an example of how younger people are consuming luxury brands and at a pace, but the brands themselves have had to obviously work on the product and, more importantly, the experience of being an owner of such a brand. And so our research, and I don't think we're the only people to be saying this, our research tells us that Gen Z and Gen Alpha put as much value on the digital thing, whatever that might be, as much as the physical. And secondly, these consumers are equally interested in product ownership and the experiences that owning that product might provide to them. So the experience layer becomes more important than ever. And our technology, certainly the complement of our ventures, helps to provide that.
That's very interesting, but I feel there is still a challenge of perception. For example, if you take this beautiful suit behind you, how does that live in a digital world?
That's an easy one to answer, because certainly my avatar in the next wave of Web3 evolution, my avatar will be wearing a Huntsman suit. And already we know that 1 in 5 Roblox players, gamers, changes their outfit on a daily basis. Think about that. That's incredible. And so, again, focusing on the Gen Z, Gen Alpha population, these consumers, especially thanks to the COVID period, are already well versed in developing their own identities to represent how they feel and look and behave in the virtual world in a way that I think is going to transcend to older generations too. And that's actually why blending the physical and the digital, with an example of clothing, comes together when we start to spend more time as consumers in the more immersive form of the internet through this technology we call the metaverse.
Very good. Now, as you mentioned, the luxury industry has had its fair share of challenges of late.
Yes.
How would Zelica help overcome those challenges? Let's say I'm a luxury brand, I'm suffering from a downward turn in the market. How does Zelica come in and help me?
Okay. Well, firstly, we explain to brands that we are working with and hope to work with that the journey has to start with what we call multisensory experimentation. Quiet experimentation with internal people or very loyal customers that allows you to understand the scope and benefit of using these technologies that I've been talking about and blending them together. So you might think, for example, it's ridiculous to think about how you might do a wine tasting in the metaverse, but it's completely possible, I can tell you. I'll invite you to the next wine tasting.
Please.
And so we start by explaining to luxury brands that first they have to understand what this technology is about and how it works, and why doing things with this technology we can do today would not have been possible even 10 years ago. And the aim with Zilliqa Group is to provide all the tooling that a brand needs to set up their presence in this new world so they don't have to worry about it. Just as today, the people that run this beautiful place do not have to worry about whether the plumbing or the electricity or the gas works underneath that pavement down there. In the same way, we have to mimic reality. In the digital world, when we begin to build a presence for luxury brands in a luxury-themed metaverse, the brand will not have to worry about whether the Web3 layer works or the music layer works or the augmented reality, virtual reality aspects of this work. They will just work. And that is what a brand has to understand. They don't need to worry about how this works. It will just work.
So it's a case of also offering luxury as part of the experience now. So we're enhancing that aspect of the market. How do you see that?
Good point. At an event I spoke at last year, I was challenged by the head of a luxury brand about how people like ourselves were looking to democratize luxury. And I won the argument because luxury is luxury, whether it's digital or physical, it's luxury. When we listen to an amazing piece of music, when we watch, I don't know, the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra on stage through a TV screen, that's still a luxurious experience. And so whether a product or an experience is digital or physical, the luxury element still has to be a part of this. And it's not something that is easily attained. And so we're not looking to democratize luxury. We're looking to create new product and experience sets that use this technology to make luxury available in a different format to this consumer that we've been talking about for the last 10 minutes.
Why have you focused on the luxury market? Why not other industries?
For the last 4 years, Amir, I've been looking at the industries that, I don't have to name them, but you would assume that I've been looking at, and thinking about how this technology adds new value to those industries and their consumers. And we're starting with luxury and entertainment because there is a little bit of there's a moment here. We've without naming names, but we have seen over the last 12 months how certain luxury brands have seen a sharp decline in revenues and in earnings, whereas others have experienced quite the opposite. And yes, that has a lot to do with the value of that brand, the perceived value of that brand. It has a lot to do with supply and demand and scarcity, of course. But I feel that we are going through a little bit of a moment here where people talk about quiet luxury. In China at the moment, people are talking about luxury shaming. So this happened in the 70s, by the way, which you wouldn't remember. But in the 70s, people stopped driving cars with expensive name badges on the back because it was shameful to be seen to be spending so much money on petrol when there was an oil crisis. That's a really good analogy. Mm-hmm. And I believe the same is happening today, where luxury consumers are looking for quiet luxury. And to name a brand, it's out in the open. Brands such as Loro Piana have seen an incredible adoption of very expensive, beautifully made products, again, that are beautifully crafted from the finest materials. And as you know, as somebody who wears this brand, this is not exactly cheap, but it's beautifully crafted. And the whole point here is that luxury brands need to think about how they regain momentum, because certain geographies are maybe not spending as much on luxury as they were, but that means tailoring the product towards this new, maybe something new that this consumer is looking for in terms of quiet luxury, but also looking at how we provide these same products and experience in digital format alongside the physical. We are not advocating digital only because we're not a social gaming platform. That isn't what we do. What we're looking to do here is to bring luxury brands into a beautiful virtual environment that resembles this and not a cartoon, such that people will feel comfortable, no matter what age they are, in being able to perhaps shop. In 1992, if you'd spoken to perhaps your parents or my parents, God bless them, about using this thing called the internet to shop online, they would have absolutely stared at you and wondered what on earth you were saying. And I believe the same is coming with a more immersive e-commerce experience enabled by things such as the metaverse and Web3 tooling.
So this is, as you were saying, the next phase maybe in e-commerce.
Absolutely.
But how far away are we from this next phase?
I believe that we are at least another 2 to 3 years away from maybe these audiences I've been speaking about beginning to adopt this technology. Because, Amir, it's not just the technologies that we've been perfecting, but there is a huge amount behind the scenes that also has to happen at an infrastructure level. And so just as with the adoption of the internet, which took actually some time, this technology is going to take a little bit of time for brands and their consumers to adopt. But for me, 4 years ago, it might have been a question of if. Now it's just a question of when. But I can't really give you an exact date. I'm sorry, I don't have a crystal ball to gaze into, but I would say that we're at least 2 to 3 years away. But this gives the most progressive and innovative brands time to actually start to prepare for the onslaught.
Now, this is something quite, as far as I can tell, very unique about Zilliqa and Zilliqa Group, what you are doing. I'm sure other companies are trying to go down the same road. What do you think makes you stand out?
I think it's the complement of technologies that we have invested in and created underneath the Zilliqa Group that come together to provide this sort of 1 + 1 = 5 formula. And I think it's simply the fact that we are joining things up in a way that I don't believe anybody else is at the moment. But what is latent, I don't know. We're using our blockchain, layer 1 blockchain, in a different way than other layer 1 blockchains are doing today. And that has always been the plan. I've always wanted to look at how we can find industrial applications for this technology that help those industries with the consumers of those products and experiences.
Your method sounds very collaborative. It doesn't seem like a monopoly where you get a sense from maybe other companies, not to name any, but they want to just dominate the market space. You seem to want to be able to work with everyone and be open to everyone.
Amir, you've just made a pivotal point. I have never believed in monopolization. Let's just think about this. We talk about decentralization. So how can we talk about monopolies or even oligopolies? In fact, decentralization is exactly what it says on the tin, which means that our blockchain needs to interoperate with other chains. And this is absolutely the vision. We do not want to build walled gardens. We want to create an open Web3 environment where, at an infrastructure level, our chain has to interoperate with other chains. And as has just been announced at Token 2049 in Singapore, we're absolutely delighted to announce that we are going to be working very closely with the Cardano ecosystem, in particular Emergo, which is the commercial arm of the Cardano ecosystem. We will be working together to bridge assets as a starting point, and working together to provide Web3 tooling for luxury brands as they adopt this technology. And that's a beautiful example of interoperability and collaboration. But collaboration goes beyond that external partnership. Zilliqa Group is run by a team of people. And I call this the CEO office. So yes, I head up Zilliqa Group, but my team is made up of my core CEOs in the ventures. So Matt from Zilliqa Technology, Sandra from MetaMinds, Tim from Token Tracks, all come together and we work together as the governance mechanism for what happens from a group level and how it comes to the underlying ventures and joins them up to provide technology and applications for customers. And so that collaboration goes beyond just the external. This is how we run things internally. That is unique.
Absolutely. It sounds like your corporate structure is also decentralized to a certain extent.
Indeed, it is.
Now, let's look forward. I know you said you don't have a crystal ball, but where do you see things in 5 years?
In 5 years, Amir, I absolutely believe that consumers, okay, starting perhaps with Gen Alpha and Gen Zers, but I'm hoping even people of my age, will start to utilize applications that have Web3 tooling, but they won't even know they won't even know that's there. You know, much of the population on the planet today, whether they're banked or underbanked, do use the mobile internet, and this is just it's baseline. I would imagine that people will be starting to utilize Web3, which for me is about, you know, Web 1 was about read, Web 2 was about read and write, and now Web 3 is about read, write, and own, because you've got to remember that even gamers, do you know, by the way, that one in 2.3 people today on the planet are gamers?
I didn't know that. I mean,
One in
gaming, I think people underestimate how big gaming is. I mean, it's even bigger than the film industry at this point.
It's enormous, and it will continue to grow into tens of trillions of dollars of value over the next 5 years. And the point I would make here is that as these audiences get older, they begin to earn more money. The way that they will consume is an extension of what happens on the internet today, but it will be in a more immersive setting where my avatar can walk into a beautiful virtual environment, point and click at a suit, and own the digital asset that authenticates that suit. But maybe, in this case here, maybe 3 months later, this beautiful suit arrives on my doorstep. So I have a physical and digital asset joined together, and that is what I foresee happening. You know, the digital asset becomes a passport, it becomes a receipt, it becomes an authenticator, it becomes a ticket to an amazing experience or a membership card. It's all of those things.
And in many ways, it's about trust.
Yes.
Knowing what you have is what it says. And to that point, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, I mean, most people think about blockchain and they think about transparency. How does that play into the luxury goods market?
Very good question, Amir. You may or may not know this, but the fake market for luxury goods worldwide is it's an astonishing number in the multiple trillions. I'm a collector. I collect various things, including wine, for example. And it's shocking. The numbers are quite shocking. There is a huge fake industry for luxury goods.
Even in wine?
Probably more so in wine than anywhere else,
Wow.
would you believe? But this covers art. It even covers automotive. It covers apparel, of course. And so the blockchain technology can also be used, as you know, to aid provenance and authentication. And doing this from the minute a product is born, and we are looking at some very interesting technology that will be able to provide 100% provenance and authentication for certain types of luxury good as they roll off a production line. This transparency will help to kill this trillion-dollar fake market, and I'm absolutely determined to do that, whether that be for the leather goods or the wine industry or even the automotive sector, because I think that authenticity and provenance are very important in luxury, but by the way, they're also very, very important in the medical industry, and that's certainly a sector we'll be looking at, hopefully in a few years' time.
Okay. Just wanted to pick your brain about this. We're talking about generational demographics, Gen Z, Gen Alpha. These things are very fluid. They're changing all the time. So how can a Zilliqa Group keep up with changing tastes?
I think that we have to work with luxury brands. We have to work with market researchers. We have to work with consumers and groups of consumers and really understand very intelligently how these spending patterns are going to evolve. And actually, since COVID, this is exactly what I've been doing. I've been spending a lot of my time talking to people who are in those age brackets and understanding how indeed they interact with the technologies that we're talking about already. And this is why, as I was saying earlier, don't forget, 1 in 2.3 people on the planet is a gamer. And so this is what I foresee.
It's interesting because I think this is maybe one of the challenges the luxury market does face, is not keeping up with the times. And so going back to being collaborative, which is at the core, very much it's coming across to me that it's the essence of Zilliqa Group. That sort of partnership can then make sure that these challenges are overcome.
Yes. Amir, one other point I would make as to your question is that, let me give you another tangible example. So, loyalty points. We all enjoy loyalty points and rewards, whether it be airlines or clothing manufacturers or drinks brands. But I do feel somehow that most of those mechanisms are a little bit dated. I don't even know how many rewards points I have, because when I occasionally look at what I might be able to redeem a point for, I'm not really interested in another iron, for example. And so using tokenization as a way of bringing loyalty points into your digital wallet that can be exchanged for products or experiences, and maybe not just for that single brand, becomes really, really, really interesting. Watch that space.
Great. Just finally, we talked about luxury brands being a little bit unsure about getting into the Web3 space because there is, unfortunately, somewhat of a bad reputation that's come with cryptocurrencies, tech bros, what have you. How do you go past that?
I think the first thing to understand is that we're not promoting we're not promoting a cryptocurrency marketplace here. The utility is far from that. The utility here of the blockchain technology, the metaverse technology, our music player, our gaming studio, is indeed to build environments where people can transact with each other, but have real ownership over a digital asset. I cannot tell you what happens around the speculative nature of these markets, because we are talking about publicly traded cryptocurrencies. But will that change over the next 4 or 5 years? I don't know. I cannot predict that. I'm not a trader. I'm a long-term investor in technology. That's what I do. And what I'm hoping is that luxury brands will focus on the benefits rather than some of these negative aspects, which in my mind are already beginning to minimize.
Max, I know you're a big wine collector, but how does a product like this, something you consume, live in a Web3 world?
So we have to start thinking about physical plus digital experiences. And this is where augmented reality and virtual reality play a very, very big part in bringing what I describe as multisensory experiences to these new audiences. And so let me give you an example. So I've been involved recently, in fact, in a wine tasting experience that took place in the metaverse.
How does that work?
Now I know that doesn't really make sense, but it does when we consider that, for example, in a metaverse setting, we can recreate a beautiful vineyard, a chateau, through the technology that our MetaMinds business is actually building. And we can then have avatars of the vineyard owners talking about the wine, and the avatars of the guests actually being in that chateau in an augmented or a virtual reality setting. And if we're doing that, then indeed we might be wearing some sort of a gadget.
Sure.
But to our right-hand side, wherever we are physically, we might just have a glass of wine that we can taste, whilst the avatar is taking us through a history of the vineyard, a history behind that particular wine, tasting notes of that wine. And then guess what happens is after this wine tasting event finishes, all the attendees actually receive something that pops up in their digital wallet, a digital asset that has recorded that wine tasting, and maybe a few days later a case of wine arrives on your doorstep. So indeed, we call them multisensory experiences. And today we're even thinking about how we bring a sense of smell into a multisensory experience. We can have music. We can have music that's curated by our Token Tracks venture, playing generative music that accompanies the wine tasting. And so we now think about how we bring experiences, multisensory experiences, together with something as beautiful as a wine tasting. And so that maybe starts to give you some food for thought.
Now, how do we make sure as well that this is the real McCoy? How we're getting what it says it is?
Okay, unfortunately, there is an enormous fake market for luxury goods. Some estimate this as being $2 trillion a year, others double that. In whichever case, the real luxury goods marketplace is worth about $590 billion a year. And so the fake market is at least 4 times the size of the real market. And for a long time, I've wanted to find ways of combating fraud as a consumer, as much as somebody that wants to make the world a better place for people who consume wine or other luxury goods. And I believe that the blockchain does offer a solution here whereby the digital asset, ownership of the digital asset, provides authentication and provenance for the physical item. The problem is that if we're going to do this, then the fingerprinting, let's call it that, because we are actually looking at some very cool technologies, more to come in 2025 on that, that will be able to guarantee the authenticity of a piece of glass or a piece of metal or a piece of leather. And that's the next big step, I think, in authentication and provenance. But just imagine how that digital certificate that accompanies that bottle of wine, from the moment it was actually bottled, that actually starts to kill off this fake market. And by the way, as you know, Amir, it's not just wine, it's art, it's wearables, it's even automotive. There is a huge fake market, the watch market, for example. And I'm determined that our technologies will help brands to combat fraud.
And living in the metaverse itself, in that space, that market also lends itself to that sort of authenticity?
Absolutely. You know, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Citibank, various major analysts in these firms have for the last few years been talking about how the metaverse as an industry is going to help to generate $8-10 trillion of value for brands who are operating in the luxury world, for example. And that's a big number, whichever way you look at it. And one more point is that the digital counterpart, the digital twin to this physical item doesn't cost as much as the physical item costs to develop. So what does that mean? It means that the contribution to bottom line, profitability, there's a potential for huge increase in profitability if we start to look at how we sell physical plus digital, product plus experience, especially into Gen Z and Gen Alpha.
It sounds like it's a win-win both for brand and consumer.
It's absolutely a win-win for all of us involved in doing legal trade, I would say. Yeah.